politics and Ivy got tales to share. Life in general, we go everywhere. From politics to soul repair. Tune in now, we got time to spare.
All right, get ready for a deep dive, folks. Today we're taking on some seriously thought-provoking stuff. We're going deep into the work of Rudolf Steiner.
Ooh, excellent choice.
Specifically, some lectures from 1918, right after World War I.
Ah, yes, right in the thick of things.
I mean, imagine a world just reeling from that devastation.
Yeah.
Talk about a time of upheaval.
Absolutely. Massive social and political shifts happening, everything in flux. And that's exactly when Steiner steps in and offers his insights. Not just about society.
Right, about humanity itself. Like, where are we headed?
Exactly, and what forces are shaping our future.
So we've got these 6 lectures delivered in Dornach, Switzerland.
Key location.
And just from glancing through them, it's clear. Steiner wasn't about easy answers.
No, not at all. No quick fixes here.
He was more like, okay, here's a map. Here are the hidden currents shaping your lives.
A guide helping people see beneath the surface.
And the thing is, so many of his observations
Right.
still feel relevant today, over a century later.
It's remarkable, like he was tapping into something timeless.
Okay, so let's dive into the content. Right off the bat, Steiner makes this bold statement,
Lay it on us.
the social question. And here we're talking about justice, equality, all of that.
Yeah, the big stuff.
He says it's not some theoretical debate. It's a force of nature, undeniable, and only getting stronger.
He's not messing around.
He even compares it to trying to hold back a flood.
Oh, I like that image.
You can cling to those outdated structures, right? Or you can understand what's happening and try to adapt.
Clinging to the past, never a good look.
So basically, ignoring these issues,
Not an option.
we have to engage, understand, find new ways to live together.
He was convinced those changes were coming, whether people liked it or not.
Wow, okay, so no burying our heads in the sand.
Absolutely not. He saw it as inevitable.
Whoa, okay, that's pretty intense.
Big picture thinking.
So, if the past isn't the answer, what does Steiner propose?
Well, here's where his big idea comes in.
Hit me with it.
The threefold social organism.
Ooh, that sounds kind of radical, but...
Some aspects of it. Super relevant today.
All right, I'm intrigued. Break it down for us.
Okay, so Steiner argued, a healthy society functions like 3 interconnected spheres.
It's separate, but working together.
Exactly. You've got the political sphere, the economic sphere,
Okay, it makes sense. So,
and then the free spiritual sphere.
free spiritual sphere. Interesting.
Now, the key is
What makes them work together?
recognizing the unique needs of each, right? So the political sphere, for example, that's all about rights, equality, order.
Yeah, like setting up a fair system.
Exactly. Ensuring individual freedoms.
Sounds crucial, but what about the economic sphere? Doesn't that often clash with these ideals?
Oh, Steiner was very critical of how economic forces were dominating society.
Like back then.
Back then, and arguably even more so now.
So what did he think the economic sphere should be about?
Meeting people's needs, not just making a few people rich.
Okay, I see where he's going with this,
Yeah.
but how do you stop one sphere from, like, taking over?
That's the danger, right? He believed that by clearly separating them.
So they each have their own space,
You prevent anyone from becoming too dominant.
like checks and balances, but for society as a whole.
Precisely. And then there's that third one, the free spiritual sphere.
Yeah, that one's still kind of mysterious.
This is where it gets interesting. He includes education, arts, religion, personal growth.
All the things that nourish the human spirit.
Exactly, allowing for individual growth.
So not just material concerns, but a sense of purpose.
And he argued this sphere needs to be completely free
Free from.
interference by the state or the economy.
Oh, it can't be controlled or manipulated.
Otherwise, it gets stifled. It can't fulfill its vital role.
Okay, I'm getting a sense of this threefold organism.
It's a big idea.
Complex, but I can see how it could create a more, I don't know, holistic society.
Harmonious, balanced.
But he doesn't stop there, does he? Steiner also dives into these fascinating observations about East versus West.
This is where his spiritual research really shines.
Like he's going beyond just the surface level.
Trying to understand those deep cultural differences.
And specifically, he talks about their understanding of human dignity.
Ooh, that's a big one.
How does he even begin to characterize that?
Well, he uses this very striking image.
Oh yeah, I remember reading about this.
He says, when he tried to understand the Western concept of human dignity,
Through spiritual observation.
it appeared to him as a specter.
A specter. Like, a ghost.
A fading echo of past ideals.
Wow, that's powerful. So what about the Eastern concept?
He describes it as and this is even more intense,
Okay, I'm ready.
a nightmare.
A nightmare. Whoa.
Something oppressive, disturbing, but
There's a but.
also possessing this potential for transformation.
Okay, I've got to be honest. That word nightmare makes me a little uneasy. Is he saying Eastern cultures have a negative view of human dignity?
Not at all. We have to remember Steiner's using symbolic language here.
Oh, okay.
He's conveying subtle forces, often unconscious ones.
So not a literal nightmare then?
No, and he sees both the specter of the West and the nightmare of the East as necessary.
Necessary for what?
For humanity to move forward, we need both.
So it's like each region has a piece of the puzzle.
And neither one is complete on its own?
I'm starting to see how this ties into his threefold organism idea.
That balance and interdependence again?
But now, applied to global relations,
You gotta...
Steiner was really worried about conflict between East and West.
Especially with the rise of nationalism.
Oh yeah, he saw that as a dangerous force.
The path to division and war. And sadly,
History kind of proved him right there.
he traced its roots to what he called Old Testament thinking.
Interesting. So he's connecting ancient religious ideas to modern problems.
It's more about a way of thinking, a shared emphasis on abstract principles.
Okay, help me out here. What do you mean?
So both the Old Testament and the materialistic science of his time,
Okay, I'm following.
they focus on these abstract ideas and kind of disregard the individual human being.
Like reducing people to categories.
Exactly. And he believed this thinking persists today.
Even if we're not aware of it.
It's like an unconscious inheritance.
Whoa, okay, that's deep.
It shapes how we view the world and each other.
So if these old ways of thinking are holding us back,
What's the alternative?
exactly, what does Steiner propose?
He calls for a new way of thinking.
Sounds good, but what does that even look like?
One that's rooted in spiritual understanding and recognizes individual uniqueness.
Okay, now we're getting into some pretty mystical territory.
It's not about dogma or religious beliefs.
So not about blind faith,
It's about developing a deeper awareness of ourselves and the world.
like a shift in consciousness.
Exactly. And he believed this was essential for a more just and harmonious society.
We're talking about some big fundamental changes here.
It's the only way to move past the limitations of the past, and
Create a future where everyone can thrive.
that's the goal.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground,
It's a lot to process.
but I'm starting to see how all these pieces connect. It's like Steiner is describing this world in transition.
Grappling with huge questions about how to live together.
And he's challenging us to be more than just passive bystanders, right?
Absolutely, to become conscious participants in this transformation.
Awaken to our potential and actually contribute to a better future.
That's what it's all about.
All right, let's dive back into those lectures. Last time we ended with Steiner's call for a new way of thinking.
A real shift in consciousness.
Yeah, like a prerequisite for addressing those big social issues.
Right, he saw it as fundamental.
But then he gets into some really, mind-blowing stuff
Oh, he goes there.
about how this new thinking might actually manifest.
Yeah, this is where it gets really fascinating.
He starts talking about occult capacities,
Ooh, those are always fun to explore.
hidden potentials within us that he believed would shape the future.
It's like he's saying, hey, we're evolving.
But not just physically, right?
Our consciousness, our capabilities, everything's shifting.
Okay, I'll admit, occult capacities sounds a little,
Out there.
yeah, a little out there. Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure, and it's important to remember, a cult for Steiner.
Not about ghosts and goblins. was it?
Actually, he's not talking about the supernatural, more like...
Hidden potentials.
Yeah, capacities that are latent within us, but will become more prominent.
So, like an evolutionary upgrade.
He saw them as evolutionary potentials, crucial for navigating the future.
Okay, I'm willing to keep an open mind. But what are some examples?
He identifies three main ones. Material occultism,
Okay. Material occultism.
hygienic occultism, and
This is where it gets a little tricky.
eugenic occultism.
Yeah, that word eugenics definitely raises some red flags
It's really important to understand these terms in context,
of Steiner's overall thinking.
not the distorted versions we might associate them with.
Okay, so starting with material occultism.
He believed the West, with its focus on science and technology, was naturally drawn to this.
Like we have an affinity for it.
Exactly. This capacity, he said, would give us the power to manipulate the physical world.
In totally new ways.
Think genetic engineering,
Right.
AI, nanotechnology, the whole shebang.
All that cutting-edge stuff that can be used for good or bad.
Precisely. And he saw both sides. the immense potential, but also the danger.
So a strong ethical framework is crucial.
Absolutely. It's not just the tech itself, but the consciousness behind it.
Okay, I'm with you so far. What about hygienic occultism?
Steiner felt this was strongest in Central Europe.
Interesting, geographically specific.
He connected it to the power to heal, maintain physical health.
So like holistic medicine, natural remedies.
Yeah, all of those practices that focus on the whole person.
Mind, body, spirit, all connected.
He saw it as crucial for navigating the future, especially
Things get more complex, more interconnected.
exactly dealing with environmental issues, potential pandemics, all of that.
Okay, and finally that tricky one, eugenic occultism.
I know this one requires some careful unpacking.
Given the history of eugenics,
Steiner's conception was very different.
from those horrific movements.
Absolutely. He wasn't advocating for forced sterilization or any kind of violation of individual rights.
Okay, good to know. So what was he saying?
He believed eugenic occultism was about influencing human evolution.
Consciously.
Yes, but responsibly. He saw it as strongest in the East, in those cultures that emphasize
Spiritual development.
exactly an ancestral wisdom. It's about guiding human evolution towards,
A more spiritually awakened state.
yes, a more harmonious way of being, fulfilling our potential as a species.
So not about manipulating genes in a lab.
Not in that sense, no. It's more about tapping into those deeper spiritual forces
To guide future generations.
and help humanity reach a higher level of consciousness.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
It's about evolving beyond our current limitations
Tapping into those hidden potentials to create a better world.
and recognizing that these capacities are going to interact.
Creating a complex interplay between different cultures.
Yeah, with potential for both conflict and collaboration.
So understanding these forces is crucial.
to navigate the challenges ahead and
Hopefully make the right choices.
precisely. Steiner saw the future of humanity resting on
What kind of choices we make.
and how well we can collaborate, recognizing each culture's unique contribution.
Wow. Okay, we've covered some pretty mind-bending concepts here.
From the social organism to those occult capacities.
But before we move on, I want to touch on something else Steiner brings up.
What's that?
He talks about the need for, and this is a mouthful,
On.
conscious myth-making.
Ah, yes, that's a fascinating aspect of his thinking.
Okay, so not myths in the sense of, like, fairy tales.
Not exactly. More like the underlying narratives that shape our
Of
understanding.
the world, of ourselves.
Exactly, and he believed those old myths. They're not cutting it anymore.
Like they're outdated.
They don't address the complexities of the modern world.
So we need new myths.
Consciously created ones,
Yeah.
based on spiritual insight.
To guide us towards a more, I guess you could say,
Truly human social order.
yeah, one that's actually aligned with our potential.
Now, that's a tall order.
How do we even begin to create new myths?
It starts with a deeper understanding of human nature.
Recognizing that spiritual dimension.
Yeah, and crafting stories that inspire us, stories that call us to
Live more consciously, compassionately.
create meaning and purpose in a world that often feels...
Fragmented, meaningless.
Exactly. Steiner believed the social question.
All those big issues we talked about.
At its core, it's a spiritual question.
Whoa. Okay, so not just political or economic.
It's about recognizing our interconnectedness, our shared humanity,
That we're all in this together.
and that we have the potential to create something better.
Okay, this has been a lot to take in.
We've covered a lot of ground.
The threefold social organism, those occult capacities, the need for new myths.
It's a pretty radical vision, but
The question is, how do we make it a reality?
that's the challenge. And Steiner believed the first step is
Enlightenment? Meditation?
awareness, understanding the forces at play. He urged us to study them.
So research analysis.
Yes, but also to develop ethical frameworks for their use.
Because knowledge without wisdom is dangerous.
It's about bringing those hidden forces into the light of consciousness.
Guiding them for the benefit of humanity.
And that work needs to happen on multiple levels.
Individually.
Socially, politically.
So changing ourselves, changing the systems.
And creating new structures that support collaboration, diversity.
It's a massive undertaking.
It is, but Steiner believed it was possible.
To weave all these threads together.
Into a more just, sustainable, and compassionate world.
That's a vision worth striving for.
Absolutely, and it starts with each of us taking responsibility.
For our inner world, our role in this larger web of life.
That's what it all comes down to in the end.
All right, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Rudolf Steiner's 1918 lectures.
It's been quite a journey so far.
We've really been through the ringer, haven't we? From the social question,
The threefold social organism.
the clash of East and West, those emerging occult capacities.
Even the need for, what was it, conscious myth-making?
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. But now I'm really curious, how do we put all this into practice?
That's the big question, right? And Steiner he was a visionary, no doubt,
Oh, absolutely.
but also a pragmatist. He knew this stuff wasn't easy,
No quick fixes.
but he believed it was essential, like, for humanity's future to figure this out.
Yeah.
And a lot of it comes back to
That threefold social organism,
exactly.
his blueprint for a better society.
It's more than just a theory for him. It's a guide for action.
Okay, so how do we move from theory to reality? Where do we even begin?
Well, he said, first we got to understand those principles governing each sphere.
Okay, back to those spheres. The political, economic, and spiritual cultural, right?
Yep. Each one has its own logic. Got to respect that.
Okay, so the political sphere. What kind of changes did Steiner have in mind?
Well, he thought it should be about justice, about ensuring individual freedoms.
The truly democratic system.
Where everyone has a voice, where power is distributed, fairly.
Well, no dictators, no tyrants.
Yeah, exactly. A system that, recognizes the worth of every single person.
That sounds good on paper, but how do you make it happen in the real world? You've got all these power dynamics, right?
He didn't lay out a super detailed political program or anything,
Right.
but he did stress decentralization, more citizen participation at the local level.
More grassroots stuff.
Yeah, and of course, a strong legal framework. You got to have that.
To protect individual rights.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's less about top-down control and more about,
Empowering people.
giving them a say in how they're governed.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about the economic sphere? That seems even trickier.
Oh, absolutely. The way our economy is structured now, it affects everything.
It really does.
Steiner saw that too. He was really critical of the whole profit-driven system.
So what was his alternative?
He called it associative economics. Basically, businesses are owned and operated.
By the workers.
Exactly. So the profits are shared more fairly. You create a sense of community.
Less about cutthroat competition.
And more about, meeting people's needs, distributing wealth more equitably.
Sounds almost utopian.
It's a different way of thinking about things, for sure.
But how realistic is it? Could we actually shift to something like that?
Well, Steiner believed it was necessary. He thought the current system is,
Doomed to fail.
eventually, yeah. It's just not sustainable.
So it's not just about being idealistic. It's about survival.
Exactly. Finding ways to live and work that are actually in harmony with,
The planet.
with each other.
Okay, so we've got a new political vision, a new economic model. What about the third sphere, the spiritual cultural one?
This one's super important. It's the foundation for everything else.
The ethical grounding, the values.
Yeah, Steiner thought it should be completely free. Interference from the state, from the economy. So it would,
With creativity, developed spiritually.
exactly, without being manipulated or exploited.
But that's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah.
In a world where everything seems driven by money and power.
It's a challenge, for sure.
How do you create that space for freedom?
Steiner thought it starts with the individual, taking responsibility for your own development.
So, self-education.
Yeah, being critical, discerning, seeking out wisdom wherever you can find it.
Not just accepting things blindly.
And also remembering we're all connected.
Part of a larger web.
And when we realize that, we naturally become more compassionate, more responsible.
It's like that sense of interconnectedness shifts our whole perspective.
It does, and that's what ultimately leads to a more harmonious world.
Okay, so we've got all these pieces.
Mm.
The political, economic, spiritual.
It's a lot to take in.
It is a big vision.
And frankly, a little overwhelming. The world's facing so many problems right now.
It's easy to feel hopeless.
Exactly. But Steiner's work
Offers a way forward.
does it. How so?
It reminds us we have the power to shape the future. It's not all doom and gloom.
We're not just helpless victims.
No, but we have to take responsibility. The world we see out there.
It reflects our inner world. And that's why self-development, spiritual growth, those are so important.
So changing ourselves is changing the world.
It's the first step. Cultivating love, compassion, wisdom.
That sounds pretty woo-woo to some people,
The
but
foundation for everything else.
it's like Steiner's saying we have to do the inner work.
If we want to see real change in the outer world.
This has been a truly amazing deep dive. Thank you so much for guiding us through it.
It's been my pleasure. Really enjoyed exploring these ideas with you.
I think Steiner's work is more relevant than ever, and I hope our listeners are feeling
Inspired.
inspired, yeah, but also empowered to actually make a difference.
That's the goal.
To wrap things up, I want to leave everyone with one final thought from Steiner.
All right, hit us with it.
He said, "In a world increasingly dominated by abstract ideals and ideologies, how can we stay grounded in the reality of the individual human being and avoid falling prey to illusions?"
That's a powerful question, one that we all need to wrestle with, I think.
I agree. And on that note, we'll be posting links to all the source material in the show notes, so you can keep exploring these ideas. Thanks for joining us. And remember,
The journey starts with each of us.